Paul Atreides is stranded on Arrakis with his mother. He's just won a ritual duel to the death and is now traveling with the Fremen to one of their sieges. His goal? To unite the Fremen, wage war against House Harkonnen, and avenge the massacre of House Atreides. It's Dune Part Two. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Dune Part Two. Dune Part Two, written by Jon Spaihts and Denis Villeneuve, directed by Denis Villeneuve, starring Timothee Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista, Christopher Walken, and Javier Bardem. And for a complete cast listing, as usual, you can check out the link in our show notes. I am not here alone. No, you're not. Ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, you will not believe what has happened for the occasion of Dune Part 2. Incidentally, it lined up with her schedule. It lined up. And here we are together once again. I am here with
Nick, it's me. Hi, guys.
Nichole Hill is back once again. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be back.
I'm glad to have you. This is wonderful. Everything is right in the world. I love all of my guests. You are my favorite guest, so I'm always glad to have you.
I'm your favorite guest too, but I like the other ones. They're fine.
Okay. Don't get us canceled by our other guests.
No,
I'm never going to be.
I love you. Jonquilyn.
JC Howard.
JC. I'm a big JC fan.
Yeah. Laura,
I just heard her
Nichols.
on the, what did y'all do?
We did Lisa Frankenstein.
Lisa Frankenstein. I love that. I love all your guests.
Okay, good. I just didn't shout out half of y'all. I'm sorry.
But I like you guys too.
But we like all of you. Nick is the original guest, so we're glad to have you back. Okay, so we saw Dune Part 2. Nick, this is going to be interesting because you haven't seen Dune Part 1.
I did not see Part 1.
But I have, and it's funny because when I was watching it, I was thinking about you the entire time because I was like, there was several times I wanted to lean over and be like, that's not just happening. That's because of Part 1. I wanted to there was several times I wanted to tell you, and I only say that because, and I want to say this to everybody, if you have not seen Dune Part 1, I want you to know they don't give you anything in Dune Part 2. It's like, you better have seen the first one. It's not like a Marvel movie. I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, Nick, I'm going to have to explain this one to you. It's on Netflix. You should watch it because I think the setup, there's stuff that happens in this one that in terms of brutality that if you saw the first one, you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it. Sight unseen, you just watched it. What do you think? Oh, and if anybody, I'm not going to go into the plot of Dune Part 2 that much. We're not going to do too many spoilers in this one. But if you want to hear about the plot of Dune Part 1, that is in the feed. I will link to it in the show notes. Check out that review. And that was when we were still in the pandemic. We were deep in pandemic.
Oh, that's right.
I watched it both on HBO Max, and I went to the theater and saw it. I saw both.
You risked it all.
I risked it all. But I was the only one risking it all in those days.
Huh?
I was the only one risking it all in those days.
Yeah.
So anyway, what did you think of Dune Part 2?
Stunning. I was stunned from start to finish. First of all, I mean, obviously, and everybody always talks about this, the cinematography is incredible.
Denis knows what he's doing.
Ooh, man.
And he works with good people.
And there's little odes to the 70s. I just kept seeing the way he was doing it. A lot of odes to like Star Wars. If you love that sci-fi fantasy, space fantasy, he's paying beautiful homage while doing it his own way. Yeah. And then, a meditation on power.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. I was like, I know there's a lot I don't know, but from what I'm seeing, we've got our traditional hero's journey, which is great. We've got our resisting of the call. We've got all of the beats that you can recognize, anyone could recognize because it's the hero's journey. But the way that he made, the way that each individual character has a relationship to power, that they are singularly motivated by that relationship to power, whether it draws them to it or away from it. And they're kind of archetypal relationships where it's just like, I want it, I don't want it, I'm fascinated by it, I want to leverage it for this, I don't want to care about it. Like, I just was blown away by that.
There is a scene, you're right, there's a literal scene where one character is dying and they're facing the throne and they start crawling towards the throne.
Right? When you're dying, with your dying breath, you are crawling towards a thing you know you're not going to get.
Yeah.
You're dying.
Yeah, it was like, I just want to get close enough to see if I can touch it, which is, that's, the thing is, I appreciate this look at that you have of it, because for me, all the evaluation I was doing was saying, are y'all doing a good job enough continuing the story?
Yeah.
And I thought they were. And actually I'll chime in now. Just for everyone who's seen the first one, if you sit down and watch the first one, you roll right into the second one. Where it leaves off in the first one, it picks right back up in the second one. The story I think is very good. I think I found myself watching it through your eyes being like, man, I hope she knows that all this Messiah stuff is kind of seated differently in the first one. And there's more skepticism in the first one that balances out what happens in the second one. Because in the second one, it seems like there's a lot more hero worship and people being like, Lisana Gaib over, which became kind of a running joke, which was great. But
I can still tell, like what I can tell, you can easily see that there has been a progression here. That obviously he was not a good fighter. Now he's a better fighter. Like there's some things, and
well, he was always a good fighter.
He was, but then she was like impressed by how well he fought.
Yeah, and so there's one thing, he was trained, and he's trained by two people. One of them you did not see.
Right.
And when you see him, and when you see him fight, you'll see where it kind of came from. But there's a whole.
Did that spin come from his original trainer?
No. Okay. So they don't actually. This is actually one of the. I like this movie better because they kind of showed that Paul was already capable when he got there, but there was stuff that he had to learn from the Fremen, and you picked all that up. That's all in this movie. Yeah. But there's stuff in the early where he gets into a fight with the gunny sergeant from Josh Brolin, and Josh Brolin is telling him about like, hey man, you don't just fight when you're in the mood. You got to fight no matter what, because he basically is like, I don't feel like fighting right now. And he's like, nah, you gonna fight right now, and they start fighting, and you gotta. That's how when you see it, when you see it, you'll be like, okay, I know what Ronald meant, but like they when they get into the fight, he like teaches them and he's telling them, and then you learn all like the little things about the universe. So everything, that was another thing, is that everything that happens, every device, everything that exists, everything you see, you can figure out how it works by watching it, but they explicitly tell you in the first movie. So they're like, this is a thumper, it does this. Right. This is a sand compactor, it does this.
To pick up on. Yeah. And I'm not really the kind of person who's like, what's going on? It's like, I can trust that there will be patterns, you will do this more than once, and I will pick it up. So there wasn't anything, like of course like the particulars of the battle, I need to go back and watch, but I felt like I was caught up in just the story of power and the story of belief and hope, and all of that is just so captivating. And oftentimes, obviously, you need a story to be that more the thumpers and the sand and all that's the vehicle through which to tell a story of how people interact with power.
And I think that's why I'm so excited for you to see the first one, because you already have this framework, you're now going to see even more of that, because there's people who are dead from the first one who were like seeding these ideas in the movie. One of them about like accepting power even when it's thrust upon you, and I was thinking about that the whole time, because a character basically states that to Paul, and then you see Paul then have that struggle throughout this entire movie. So it like in those ways, I think I'm glad that you kind of had a chance to see it through these eyes, because there's a lot in me. I'm just enjoying it. Every time I put on Dune Part 1, I have to watch it. I have to put my phone down and watch every second of it, because there's so many like cool things that happen. It a lot of ways kind of reminds me of the beats and rhythm in the same way I feel about Avengers Infinity War, where you're marching towards something and you're excited, and when you get to the end, you're like, oh my God, there's hope, but I don't think there's much. I don't know where this is going. And then like in the second movie, they're like, nah, let's build it back up again and go to the thing. So I'm really excited for you to see the first one.
Yeah, and they did a lot of great work, like laying there's a lot of conflict for the third one.
Yes.
So we've got like struggles, and it's interesting and it's compelling, and it's not just like to be continued. It doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
It feels like we're going to go into a new situation with some flaws, with some damage. Yeah. It's very interesting. All that said, can I do my notes? Do you have more thoughts?
Oh, no, we can do notes. But I will say one thing.
Yes.
You're 100% right. And I also think that I've never seen a third movie set up like this before. Like, I've never seen, like, where it's just like, I don't know if the good guy protagonist is going to stay the protagonist. Yes. I don't know if that's going to happen here. Yes. And I'm very interested to see how this goes moving on, because like they say, like elections are easy, governing is hard. And it feels like he's already going into a place where he has to actually govern. And I'm very interested to see where that goes. Are you about to say notes or your rating?
No.
Okay, give me notes.
Okay. I think that it's very interesting the ways that women have to navigate power in this world. It's very similar, obviously, to the way that women have to navigate power in the world that we're in now. Zendaya, gorgeous, stunning, love to look at you. Didn't feel like she had that much to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if that's just me, not having seen what happened before, but it just was sort of like a lot of like angry looks.
It's true. She had more to do in this one than the last one.
Yeah, that's right.
And this one, I felt like she had more. And there was a lot of criticisms and everyone saying, do we need another movie about a white dude taking over, like with a brown person behind them? And they kept repeating back to us, no, we know that's happening. That's in our minds. We don't want to do that. But again, they were saying this in 2020, and now it's 2024. And I have a feeling that now they're like, we're just going to make the movie we were going to make, because it does feel in a lot of ways like Zendaya got sidelined to like almost magical Negro level, but there's an actual magical Negro in the first one. So if you saw him, you wouldn't,
Yeah. I figured he must have been, because when we did all the stuff, I was like,
yeah, well, you'll see. And it kind of like the way that Paul is kind of referencing him in this one was bothering me a little bit because of the way that he exits the first movie, which you'll see soon enough. But yeah, like you're 100% right. Was that what are your other notes?
No, that was my main note. I was like, what if we switched out her role with another major female role in the film? Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
But she was playing the role that I've seen every single black sidekick play for all of time.
Yeah.
And she can do more than that.
Well, I'm very interested to see what they do with the third movie, because they set up 3 strong female characters. Yeah. You have Florence Pugh, you have Zendaya, and you have not Rebecca Ferguson. I was talking about, Anya Taylor-Joy, who has been set up in a way, one, they called her a surprise character, and 2, she's been set up in a way where I'm like, oh, we're going to see more of this person in the next movie, I'm assuming. So I'm hoping they do more. There is a lot that they do in terms of talking about the type of power that women have in the first movie, which I'm actually very interested to hear your thoughts when you see it. But you're absolutely right. She felt sidelined in this one in a way that I didn't like.
That's my only thing. Like, I can see the way that women are wielding power in this one.
Yeah.
And it's all like all the different ways that you would think a woman would wield power. Léa Seydoux, that's her. We did the interestingly worded discoveries that she made of Austin Butler.
Yeah,
Remember when we were like...
Somebody in this movie is called sexually vulnerable.
That's not what they meant.
And I remember I turned to Nick and said, you mean vulnerable sexually?
Yeah, that they meant vulnerable sexually, but then we were like, something else happens and we just turn to each other and go, sexually vulnerable.
Yep. We get it. So I mean, it's a good movie. I think it's good. Well, you want to give your rating? What would you rate this movie of 5 stars?
4.
You're right. This is a 4-star movie.
Yeah. It's just a 4. I mean, it's stunning visually. Yeah. The story is compelling. The characters are like realized, minus there. Yeah. But even with the little bit that she had to do, she was still, her relationship to power was still interesting. Like, power was the sun, and everybody just had a relationship, an individual relationship with the sun, and that was gorgeous. So yeah, it's a 4 for me.
I give it a 4. I also think that what Zendaya did, she did well. Yeah. And I was sitting there watching it thinking, man, like, well, I'm really excited to see her in Challengers. And I'm excited to see her, like, her career moving forward. And I was sitting there watching, I'm like, man, the young people got it. Because, like, Florence Pugh is in there, Timothee, Chalamet, he's in there. like Austin Butler's in there, and they're all holding it down, and they're holding it down against some like pretty incredible actors in their own right. Like Javier Bardem is basically reduced to like a sidekick at some point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's a somebody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like I think all of the kids were holding it down. This is definitely
Kids were holding it down.
they did a good job. They did a good job. I think I'd give it a 4 out of 5 stars as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. They're very young though. I was like, look at the young people. I am not, I guess, there yet. But when Rebecca, or there anymore, but when Rebecca Ferguson first came on the scene with Mission Impossible 2, like I'm just remembering all of the people who are now like the old people in the movie. I'm like, but I remember when you came on the scene and you were so cool, but now you're old and we have to make way for the youth.
Yeah, and she's mid-30s. She just got here. So, I got to look that up. I'm pretty sure she's mid-30s, if I'm not mistaken. Before I let you go, you are in the middle of a new season of Secret Adventures of Black People. Tell the people how that's going.
Oh my gosh, it's going so well. It's about my move to LA, which you all have kind of been a part of. You heard about when I left.
Pretty much.
So it's about that journey. It's a narrative, my first narrative on the show, and it's like I'm just doing an audio diary of my travels.
It is excellent. I'm behind. I've only listened to the first 2 episodes, but I'm gonna catch up. I shouldn't. Don't listen.
Know.
Well, I still want to watch. I want to be a part of it. No, I want to listen.
Okay.
I want to hear like the way everybody else does. No, I'm gonna catch up. I feel like with my friends' podcast, I want to make sure I'm not listening to them in my regular podcast time, because sometimes I zone out.
Yeah.
So if I just turn it on while I'm like doing my morning routine, I normally listen to like reviews and the news and stuff like that in the morning. I like to like save this for a drive and all that. So I'm excited. If you have not subscribed, you should subscribe to Secret Adventures of Black People. It's available everywhere you get your podcasts and probably where you're listening right now. But yeah, with all of that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. I am mixing this episode.
What?
And once again, if you listen to this and you're like, you know what, the sound isn't that great, you know what you should do? You should get in there and go to the Patreon. Go to the Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Oh It's Big Ron. Actually, no, it's patreon.com/Leaving the Theater. I think I've been giving y'all the wrong link. It's patreon.com/Leaving the Theater, or you can go to the link in my show notes to help us out if you want to help the show better. This is the direct contribution. This is how we get Bias Studios to help mix the show. So help us out. Again, that's patreon.com/Leaving the Theater, or go to the link in our show notes.
Well, thank you, Ronald.
Show
You usually take the mixer.
That's true. It's true. So thank you, me. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Dune Part 2 or Nichole Hill, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stu. That's STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening. And thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, even though I didn't watch the first one.
Are you going to watch it?
I am going to watch it. I'm going to watch it immediately.
Like today?
Wednesday, Thursday, probably Saturday. But it's a priority.
When are you going to watch the movie?
I mean, like a Sunday-ish.
So Sunday you're going to watch the movie?
Sunday I'm going to watch the movie. Sunday's the day.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.